One word: integrity. Doing the right thing when nobody's around to notice. If you act with integrity, first and foremost in all things that you do, your entire organization is going to reflect that. As a leader, you must be the model of integrity. You need to treat people fairly. You need to do the right thing. Even if it costs you money, you need to do the right thing.
Welcome to the Build It to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe that the key to scaling and compounding your wealth and life starts every single day with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal is to help you scale and compound your wealth and life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. My name is Brett Swartz, and every episode we're joined by some of the top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires, where they share their stories, secrets, and wisdom with us so we can all scale more and make a bigger impact. Excited about our next guest. He is out of Michigan. He is the founder of SaaS Gurus, and he is on a mission to help us elevate our financial strategy and meet challenges and drive our company value. Working with pre-seed to Series B stage SaaS startups, he ensures that the founders have reliable metrics and a solid understanding of their true economics of their business to maximize valuation. He optimizes financial operations, sales operations, human resources operations, and risk management systems, and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Anthony Nitsos. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brett.
Excellent. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us just a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Well, my story started off at medical school, believe it or not. I was entered into the University of Michigan Medical School at the age of 18. Decided about 3 or 4 years into it that I really did not want to be a doctor. So I pivoted and started a career that eventually landed in finance. So, I really do much of the same thing. So instead of curing people's bodies, I'm curing companies' corporate finance situations.
Phenomenal. And by the way, we're talking about mastering cash forecasting for business, for real estate, or even your tech company. Anthony, I believe we'll all be given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be blessing and help to others. I'm curious, what do you feel like the most natural gifts that you were given when maybe you were younger, you identified those, and how do you use those to help and bless people today?
I'm a healer. First and foremost. I mean, that's why I selected medicine as, career path at such an early age. It didn't turn out to be the kind of healing that I ended up doing. The kind of healing that I embrace and bring into my business today is the healing of corporations, and specifically on the finance side of things. Corporations are just like human bodies. As a matter of fact, the name itself, corpus, comes from body. So how corporations work and how human bodies work, mind, spirit, soul, doesn't really matter. It's all an integrated whole. And that's the approach that I take when I deal with my clients.
Excellent. So actually, we're going to retitle this episode Financial Healing for Your Corporation. So let's dive right into that, Anthony. What is the number one secret to healing financially your corporation?
It starts and ends with cash management. There isn't a single more important metric as far as I'm concerned. Think of cash as blood, right? You can't live without your blood, right? Your business cannot live without its cash flow. Net income is not something you spend. It's great. The CPAs need to know that. I'm a recovering CPA myself, but I'm primarily a finance person. And so I spend most of my time trying to predict the future. And the future that we're trying to predict most of the time is what's the working capital balance going to be at the end of each month for the next 18 to 24 months? Do we have enough? Are we going to run out? What do we do with it if we have excess? If we need it, where do we get it from? Where are we going to deploy that working capital to greatly enhance the bottom line or the overall health of the organization?
Okay, excellent. By the way, if you want to learn more right now with Anthony Nitsos, you can go to sassgurus.io. That's SASSgurus.io. Okay, that makes sense, right?
I'm sorry, I need to correct that. SAAS Gurus, 2 A's.
Okay.
SAASgurus.io.
Okay, perfect. So cash management cash is the blood, cannot live without it, cash flow. So you said a number of things there. What is the working capital for the next 6, 12, 18 months? What is the cash flow projections? What were a couple other ones you said there?
How are you going to deploy that cash? If you're running out, in the venture capital world, which I deal with a lot, about 2/3 of our clients are venture capital backed. We're very much focused on what's called the cash runway. When do we run out of cash? And at what point do we need to start looking to raise more outside investment or whatever funding it's going to be? It could be debt, it could be venture debt, could be founder money, depends on what it is. In the bootstrap world, where we have a number of our other clients, what we're primarily focused on is, do you have enough cash, A, to pay everybody, pay your vendors, give yourself a good living so that you can, live securely, and then whatever's left over, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to invest it into product development? Are we going to invest it into an acquisition? Are we going to invest it into the sales organization? These are decisions that we need to sit down and have a conversation about. It's kind of like, if you think about it, do I go out and work out 3 times a week? Or do I do it twice a week and spend more time with my family? It's really kind of the same. It's like, what am I doing with the body here? What am I doing with the corporation here? How am I enhancing its health and its growth and making it more valuable over time?
Okay, so that's the number one secret, right? Where do we need to invest the capital? Basically, how do we make as efficiently with the corporation and its finances and its cash flow and its operations and its sales? Like, how do we really dial this in so it's as healthy and as viable for growth as possible? And that's secret number one. What would you say secret number two is?
Secret number two is you really need to understand your go-to-market. If you don't have sales, the rest of it really doesn't matter, right? It comes down to the fact that we're in a business. The business is to sell product or services or real estate or whatever it is that you're selling. You need to know who's your ideal client. How do you get to them? Where are their watering holes where they go for their refreshment so that you can be there with your message? Do you have the message that resonates? So in addition to the cash forecast, which is hugely important because that's telling us, what we can spend and when we can spend it, at the top of that is, do you have a lead generation machine that's actually generating enough leads to feed your sales team? Does the sales team know how to close efficiently so that we end up with contracts that then turn into invoices that then turn into cash?
Okay, so you're needing to know when to go to market, how to go to market, right? I want to focus like a laser on $1 million of revenue. Let's imagine, our show is called Build It to Billions. So you can give it all away. So this is not startup. This is, folks that have already made at least $1 million or more in revenue, right? They're successful, but they're looking to scale 5, 10 million up to $1 billion in revenue, right? How does this apply to this and that framework? What are some thoughts on that?
If you have decoded your go-to-market, so you know that, hey, this is where we most efficiently get our leads. Here's how we qualify those leads. We have a really good sales process, a playbook, if you will, that converts those leads into contracts. Once you have that DNA decoded, then really what it is a matter of deploying more capital into that system in order to get more cash coming into the organization in the form of sales. So it really does start with that go-to-market DNA. You really need to decode that thing. If you haven't decoded it and you're still kind of flailing around trying to figure out, what segment do we really want to play in? Who's the ideal client profile within those segments? If you're still experimenting with that, it's really hard to scale that, right? It's kind of like you're still figuring out the DNA. You really need to nail that. The unicorns that I've worked on, they nailed that. They knew exactly what their go-to-market was. They knew exactly who their client was. They had the segments figured out. They had all the messaging figured out. At that point, it was deploying capital into those functions in order to get more sales out.
Okay, that makes sense. So getting crystal clear on your client avatar, who you're serving, who they are, where you can, you said refresh them, right? Refresh them for what when they're looking for. I like that, the watering hole, right? And then the second thing is, I guess the mistake is they either haven't defined their lead marketing system, right? They haven't defined on how to qualify them properly, and they don't have a good solid sales process that can lead to the contracts or cash flow. Like, those are probably the 3 top mistakes. Is there any wisdom that you would say that would help to what's the one that seems to be the lowest hanging fruit when you connect with companies? They're like, man, if you just did this, or is it typically all 3?
It's really an interplay of all 3, but I would say primarily it's the lead gen. If you're hiring a sales force and you're saying, hey, they're going to generate their own leads, good luck with that, is what I would say. You really need to have somebody at the top in the marketing function that really understands how to bring inbound into the organization. because if you're going to rely on your sales team to do the outbound, it's going to be a struggle for them. Really what you want is, if you think about it, is you want the marketing organization to be feeding in lots of leads, so many leads that your salespeople are overwhelmed, right? That's the ideal situation. I have a couple of clients that are in that situation right now. Their lead generation machine is working fantastically. They just can't get enough sales talent to close leads. That's a great problem to have. Okay. The problem that you don't want is a bunch of very expensive salespeople sitting around without leads.
Okay, I think this is key. All right, so so it sounds like don't pass go until you have the lead attraction inbound churning so much that it's overwhelming that you bring the sales associate in and they can't handle all the leads, right?
Right.
Versus people getting out of the order there.
Yeah. I mean, your lead function is really the key to all of it. The cash management piece is critical, of course, but we need to have a reliable sales forecast in order to have a reliable cash forecast. Anybody can spend money, right? We all know how to spend it. We're great at spending money, but generating income, that's the secret. And to the billionaires out there and the millionaires out there that have done this, they know what I'm speaking truth here, is that they figured out how to get people to take money out of their pocket and put it into the owner's pocket. That's called a sale. If you don't have an effective sales organization, the rest of what finance does is meaningless. It's irrelevant. It's like you're gonna bleed the patient dry and you expect me to save their lives. I can't do
Got
that.
it. So let's talk about business development, B2B, to unlock lists and unlock opportunities for more B2C. What is your take on that? I'm kind of curious from that standpoint. At what point do you hire a B2B versus just keep the leads just flowing in and just do B2C? But the goal again is the B2B to get to bigger opportunities or quicker sales, more conversion, because the know, like, and trust is already built up with that particular influential person, or a big M&A attorney or big CPA. And I'm kind of speaking from my own experience, right? It seems like if we can unlock financial advisors, business brokers, luxury real estate agents, they bring their client list, and then it's more of a referral versus a sale, cold sale. So walk us through that strategy, when to go B2B versus just straight B2C.
Depends on your product, right? Most of the clients that I deal with are B2B. So they're selling a product that companies use for their own internal purposes, whatever that may happen to be. The B2C market is a very different animal because you're going directly to consumers. And consumers are a very fickle bunch, right? They can change in a whim, right? So you need something that's really attractive to them. My specialty is on the B2B side, not the B2C side. Most of my clients, what we're really driving for is increasing what's called ACV, average contract value. And you get down to it, if you're going to take a company IPO, you need to have really high average contract value. Otherwise, you're not really IPO worthy. So if you're a B2C going IPO, I'm not going to address that. If you're a B2B IPO, you have to have an enterprise solution as part of your portfolio of products that you're selling. If you can't sell to enterprise corporations, you're not really IPO worthy. You need to have large contracts, 6 and 7 figure contracts, a machine that knows how to generate those contracts, those leads. And those leads are not something that comes, from a bunch of Google ads, right? That goes back to your point. That's relationship selling. That's activity-based marketing, or account-based marketing, I should say, which is you have a target list of corporations. You have a target list of people within those corporations, and your marketing and sales team's job is to get the doors open.
We're speaking with Anthony, and I'm going to spell the last name for you because you may not be able to find it otherwise. Nitsos, and you can find him by going to saasgurus.io. That's SAAS gurus.io. It's saasgurus.io to learn more about everything he's talking about here, especially if you're a tech entrepreneur and you have success, and you're looking to scale and you're looking to IPO. He helps founders and fractional. He helps founders by being a fractional CFO to scale and compound their business. So okay, so what's the next secret? Anything and then we can kind of go to open source here. But is there something there what's the next step after you've mastered that?
So you've mastered the go-to-market. You're at the inflection point. You know that you put more resources, more working capital into your sales function, you're going to get a lot more sales. Where I see the next stumble is all of the infrastructure that's necessary to support scaled growth. I've taken three companies and added zeros, that have added zeros to their revenues in 3 years, right? One from 5 to 50 million, one from 15 to 150 million, one from 20 to 200 million. And in each of those cases, the biggest struggle was the growth was so fast that the rest of the organization was in a foot race to keep up with it. And that's what held the company back and what caused stumbling problems. It starts with your hiring plan, right? You can't bring in too many people too fast. You'll choke your organization at the get-go, right? If you're a 15 person organization, do you realistically think you can add 15 people in a year? I would challenge you on that. It's going to be very difficult because those 15 people have jobs to do, and those jobs are not to train the new 15 people, right? It's to do their jobs and train those people. So we have to be careful about how quickly we grow the human resources side of the organization. Then there's all the infrastructure that goes on around it. Your information system is critical. That's your brain, right? It's like trying to grow your organization without a brain is another path of stumbling. You need to make sure that you go back to that list, that sales operation, that financial operation, the risk mitigation, the human resources operations. Those need to be thought out and planned for in detail. And I mean in detail. When we sit down and somebody says, okay, I'm going to bring in $15 million of investment into the organization. I have 35 people right now. We want to get to 100 by the end of the year. I'm going to stop them right there and say, that's not possible. Okay, you're going to kill yourselves. The point is that you need to have smart growth, you need to have scaled growth, and that starts with the earlier you can get the systems put into place that are working harmoniously and synchronized to make that growth happen, so that your sales team isn't stumbling over simple things like getting sales orders out the door, or your finance team can't collect the accounts receivable because the invoices went out too early or they didn't go out with a purchase order on them. It's a whole myriad of details that in the back office, as everybody calls it, if that back office isn't working properly, it's going to kill the front office. And that's the last thing you want. You don't want your finance and exec and your G&A function being in the way of your growth. So you have to pay attention to that stuff, and you have to pay detailed attention to it, because if you don't, it's going to hold the whole organization back.
So when you're creating these SOPs or these playbooks, right, harmonious and synchronized, right? So can you go a little bit deeper into that? Because I think this is being people, they may think I have playbooks or I have SOPs, but they're maybe not as harmonious or synchronized. Any wisdom or secrets to making sure that they're even clearer than they are now?
So let's start with the quote to cash cycle, right? Let's say you have a quoting system that's based in Word or Excel. You have a CRM that's HubSpot or Salesforce. It doesn't talk to the finance system, which could be QuickBooks. It could be, Sage. It could be, NetSuite, whatever it happens to be. If those systems are all kind of working in their own silos and they're not flowing the data back and forth between them in a seamless manner, you're going to choke. Just plain and simple, you're going to choke. Because you're not going to be able to collect cash. That quote to cash cycle, that is so huge when it comes to scaling. That is so critical when it comes to scaling, that if you don't get that right, it's going to hold your I've seen it. It will hold the entire organization back. And it could show up in accounts receivable where you've got 30% of your AR over 90 days. And now you're in a chase mode where you're trying to collect the cash. Well, that cash is what your company needs to live on. It goes back to that cash forecast, that blood flow thing. You can't just assume that these things are all going to happen. So you need to design and architect a system that says, here's our CPQ, our configure price quote system. Here's how it feeds into our CRM, whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever it happens to be. Here's how it integrates with our accounting system so that finance can get the invoices out and collect them in a timely manner, and also produce all of the metrics that we need. Cost to acquire a customer, right? Your revenue recognition, all of the things that you're going to need to present to investors, acquirers, whatever it happens to be, so that they understand that your organization is a healthy financial organization.
This is a lot, which is part of why people need to hire someone like yourself, Anthony. NITSOS, right? SOS stands for help, right? Nitsos, right? So here to help and help us to heal our financial corporations in a way, our corporations financial modeling. But more than all that, I mean, it's the entire ecosystem, right, Anthony, that we're talking about here. So the CPQ connected to the CRM, connected to the accounting system, which then can report and get detailed on the cost to acquire a customer, how quickly you're collecting this revenue. This is an entire ecosystem. So talk about your customer that or your client that you're serving. Like who is your avatar that you focused on and kind of nailed down? So those that are listening, in case they might want to reach out to you, but make sure that they're who are those that you work with, I guess is the best way to put it.
Our ideal client is the CEO and founder of a software as a subscription company, SaaS, that's what that stands for, in the pre-revenue up to the B round of investment, who is looking to really elevate their financial game. So it could be you're struggling with exactly the kinds of things I've talked about. We need to scale, but our back office systems aren't working. I need the proper KPIs in order to show my investors or my acquirers, and I don't know how to get them. I don't have the systems designed in order for me to predict my cash so that I know where and when I can spend it and how I can deploy my working capital. It really comes down to all of those things. As you said, it's holistic, right? It's like the human body. We come back to that same analogy, which is if you're not a healthy, integrated, whole person, right? You could be exercising and eating junk food, okay? You could be eating great and never exercising and sitting on your butt all day watching TV, right? It's a whole thing. Or you're depressed. You're eating all the right food and you're exercising, but you have terrible stress in your life and you're not dealing with it properly. So it's affecting your ability to function and to survive in the world. It is all of those things in a corporation. It's the same thing. That's why transitioning from medicine to corporate finance was actually pretty easy for me in the end, because in the end, we're dealing with an integrated, holistic system. It's called a corporation. And all of those parts need to be working in harmony. And you need to be solving real root cause problems, not just treating symptoms. It's not like we can take a pill for a corporation. We really need to fix what's really ailing it in order for it to function properly.
I'm hearing three things, which is kind of interesting, right? So I hear like, health wise, taking in like what you take into your body, what you're feeding your body, right? So corporation wise, like what are you taking in? Obviously, cash flow. What are you taking in? Hiring and team members. What are you taking in? Like training and so I'm kind of hearing that. Then I'm also hearing the mental state, like with health, right? So I'm hearing like mindset for the business owner, right? I'm sensing that. The thing I'm sensing is the activity, the day to day, right? The day to day operations, the day to day KPIs, the day to day, and all three of these need to be in harmony. Otherwise, something's going to break or it's not going to be as healthy. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's 3, 5, 10, whatever things you want to look at. When you take a look at a human body, we have a brain. Corporation has an information system. We have blood flow. They have cash flow. You have departments. We have organs. It's really very similar, all talking together, all interrelated, all functioning, and all feeding off of each other. It's not like I can live without my liver, right? It's an important part of my organization. You can't live without your production department. You can't live without your engineers, whatever it happens to be. You can keep stretching that analogy on deeper and deeper and deeper. And really, it comes down to what I envision the role of the CFO truly to be is the strategic enabler of the organization. We need to know as much about the organization as the CEO, because there isn't a single decision that goes on inside the corporation that doesn't have a financial impact. Think about it. I challenge anybody out there. Come up with one decision you make in your organization that ultimately doesn't show up in the bottom line. You can't. Whether your hiring practices, you're bringing in junk clients, right? You're selling to anybody who frosts the glass, as we say it, and they're not a good customer. All of that is going to have a financial impact. You hire the wrong people, you bring in the wrong customer, you have a collections issue. You don't do performance evaluations on a timely basis, you're going to have higher turnover. That's going to cost you money. Oh, we're not going to pay attention. We don't need that kind of insurance. Lawsuit, extinction level event. There isn't, like I said, a single thing that goes on inside of your organization that doesn't sooner or later have a financial impact. A really effective CFO knows that and tries to be as aware of it as possible. Not to say I'm an expert or a better expert on your organization than you are as the CEO, but I need to be the next best because I'm also there to try and anticipate minefields, things that you could be walking into that could blow up in your face. We don't want that to happen. The last thing a CEO wants is a nasty surprise. The CFO, in my mind, part of our role is to keep the CEO out of trouble.
Yeah, my mind is full here. That makes perfect sense. What else haven't I asked you so far that I should have asked you so far about what we've been talking about that you think is really important to mention now?
People. Corporations are first and foremost people. If you don't treat your people right, they can't function at the top of their game. If you're riding them hard like a horse and flogging them all the time, just like a horse, it'll eventually give up. It'll eventually fail, right? As a matter of fact, I think in the last Kentucky Derby or one of those races, didn't they cite the jockey for hitting the horse too many times? I was shocked that I read that. It's like, wow, they actually have a rule about that. It's a great rule, right? You're only allowed to strike the horse X number of times in a race. Makes total sense. Okay. But your people, yourself included, if your people aren't healthy and happy, they're not going to be performing at the top of their game. Plain and simple. So the thing that I also focus on is on the HR side of things is benefits packages, right? Are your people, do they have good insurance? Are their lives protected with life and disability insurance in the background? If you have to separate them, do you have a COBRA plan in place so they can take their insurance with them? Right? All of those things. Are you giving them good feedback that they can actually take in and act on? When you think about finance, people think of us as these cryogenically operated, cold-hearted SOBs that all we care about is the numbers. That's not an approach that I take. It's all about the people. I treat my team really well. Why? Because without them, I can't succeed. And the same applies for every single organization out there. If you run roughshod over your people, you're not going to get the best out of them.
Excellent. So people, take care of your people, healthy and happy people equals top of their game. I think John Maxwell says, well, everything rises and falls on leadership, right? And if the leader gets better, everything gets better. What are some tips or wisdom that you found that great, founders or leaders of their companies help to build the leadership in their company, or pouring into their what's the rhythm? What's it look like?
One word: integrity. Doing the right thing when nobody's around to notice. If you act with integrity, first and foremost in all things that you do, your entire organization is going to reflect that. As a leader, you must be the model of integrity. You need to treat people fairly. You need to do the right thing. Even if it costs you money, you need to do the right thing. And by doing that, you set an example for everybody else in the organization. And those that don't follow it, you need to move them out of the organization. And by doing that, I'm a very firm believer in the law of attraction. I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but if I send the vibes out into the world that this is the kind of thing that I am and the kind of thing that I want to be, that's the kind of people I'm going to attract. So if I act with integrity, I'm going to find people of integrity who are going to come to my organization. And integrity, that applies to everything. Do the right thing for your people, doing the right thing for your vendors, doing the right thing for your customers, doing the right thing for your stakeholders, doing the right thing. And people know what the right thing is. Okay? It's not really a difficult concept. If you're doing something that, aggrandizes yourself or enriches yourself at somebody else's expense, that's not the right thing. So it really comes down to, in my mind, that one word: integrity.
Excellent. Integrity. So that makes sense. Doing the right thing when nobody is noticing. And even if it costs you money, doing the right thing. And so that's who you are. So that makes perfect sense. And that's the most important thing. Is there a cadence or a rhythm as far as developing leaders, training leaders, walk through any other things to practically help leaders in the organization grow?
Don't micromanage your leadership team. You are not a deity. You do not know all. You cannot possibly be everywhere all at once. You need to rely on your team, your executive team, to function in its role and do the things that they need to do. You need a strong head of engineering. You need a strong head of marketing. You need a strong head of sales. You need a strong head of whatever, right? And once you hire those people, let them do their jobs. Don't get in their way. Don't hang over their shoulders and look at every single thing that they're doing and micromanage the living daylights out of them. To me, that is a recipe for failure because you can't possibly micromanage everything. You can't. I don't. I'm not going to look over the shoulder of all of my team members and say, hey, you're doing that wrong. And let them make mistakes. Okay. We're humans, right? We all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I have a delete button on my keyboard for a reason. Okay. It's because I make mistakes. What I don't want is somebody beating me over the head for it. I will take care of that mistake myself. Through integrity, I will make sure that I do the right thing and correct it. Either apologize to the person or fix it or do whatever is in my power to make it right. Hiring a team of leaders who function with integrity, who have the professional capability to do their jobs, is your recipe for success. You want to scale to $1 billion? You're not going to do it on your own back. You're going to do it with a team. And your leadership team is the one that needs to have the power in order to make the decisions, to control their areas, and feel safe in making mistakes, that they're not going to get beat up for it. You know, we all need to be held accountable for our mistakes. And if you make mistakes over and over again, you're probably not in the right position. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about berating an employee for making a mistake or calling somebody out in public because they made a poor judgment decision. What do you think that person is going to do after that? One of two things. They're either not going to take as many chances, which could ultimately hold your organization back because chances usually result in creativity, or they're going to leave because they don't like being treated that way. Or they're going to stay and they're going to grind their teeth and you're not going to get the best out of them. So you really need to stay out of your leadership team's way. You need to hire the right leaders and stay out of their way and let them do their jobs.
Excellent. Let's before we go to the lightning round, I want to shift a little bit now. Once the company's been built, it's scaled, you've done all the things that we've just talked about here, and you're ready to have this big exit, right? But you're facing this massive capital gains tax, right? You know, you go from 0 to 50 million or 100 million or $1 billion, you're IPOing. What would you say is the biggest frustration, Anthony, when it comes to founders that are exiting and have big capital gains taxes? And maybe what's some planning or some strategic advice that you would say when it pertains to this?
The sooner you can get yourself qualified small business, the QSBS clock ticking, the better. That gives you a huge tax exemption on the first, I don't know, what, $5 million of gain or something like that. But you know what? Death and taxes are two things that are unavoidable. You're going to end up paying some taxes on it, right? Fortunately, right now, the capital gains tax is at an almost historic low. So the more you can get on capital gains, the better. Asset sales can be really tricky depending on what you're selling as far as an asset. Stock sales are a little bit more straightforward in terms of that regard. I am not a tax expert. I know to go hire the tax experts on those kinds of things. You could be looking at a deferred sales trust, for example, if you want to hold off on the gain and put it into a sales trust for a while. That's, you know, one strategy that you could employ upon the sale of a company or its assets, so you don't have to pay all that tax today. So there are strategies out there in order to, you know, minimize that tax impact. It also depends on what state you're in. Be careful about, hate to say it, New York, be careful about being based in New York, because you also have a New York state tax that can really kill you. So pay attention to where your company is located as far as its state, because it's not just federal taxes you might end up having to pay. You could take a real walloping on state taxes too.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. And by the way, we here, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. So part of that question was self-serving, and we actually specialize in the Deferred Sales Trust, and we build capital gains tax exit plans for businesses, Bitcoin, real estate. First ever did with Bitcoin. We did a business sale up in Massachusetts, $8 million sale, defer all the tax. They had a $2.5 million tax. I think the biggest thing, Anthony, that folks need to realize is have a very clear vision on what matters the most for them for the exit. And if they're the entrepreneur who's going to be starting another business or wants to buy real estate or keep doing their own deals, then you got to have a strategy like the Deferred Sales Trust and a team that knows how to execute that in a way that's seamless as possible, or vice versa. If you want to retire and be passive, or just diversify, having strategies that do that. Now, I would push back a little bit on the taxes, death and taxes. So my question is, or my thought is, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it really make a sound, right? And we could argue that. So with the Deferred Sales Trust, what I found is interesting, Anthony, is you don't have, there's a 1.0 and a 2.0 version too, for those who are wondering. 1.0, you never have to touch the principal. In fact, you can just live off the cash flow. So back to your New York analogy, if you have a $10 million exit, let's use a 40% tax bill on a zero basis. That's 10 million versus 6 million. Most will just live off the interest. And let's just say it's earning 8 or 9%. That's $800,000 or $900,000 of revenue, cash flow coming in, and that can pass to kids. All of it, and keep passing to kids. And you can just have that as the cash flow machine. The second part of it is you can actually fund the next business venture. So I call it to go fund yourself, right? Instead of having to get SBA financing or go get private equity or something else or debt, this trust can be the silent joint venture partner that owes you the money, but can still not finance, but joint venture partner with you. So it's kind of like you borrowed from yourself. And these are some of the nuances that I think sometimes gets missed for the entrepreneur who wants to do their next deal. And the last one I'll say is estate tax. I think this one gets overlooked. The death tax is about 40% above the exemptions. The exemptions, 28 million married, 14 million single. Those are cutting in half. Those are kind of the highest they've ever been. But estate tax is a big piece. The stepped up basis doesn't solve for that. So eliminate that death tax. We have a 2.0 version that upon the sale, we can get it outside the taxable estate forever. So we're working on a $600 million deal right now. And they have, married, and close to 40 years old. I mean, his ability to compound that over his lifetime is massive, but without any charity, life insurance, or gifting required, in one day and one sale, we can eliminate the estate tax. And I think those are the key things. It's like knowing the game you're playing, right? Knowing the problems that are there, knowing the challenges, and then figuring out a solution and a team to execute, which gives you the freedom and flexibility that you want with your capital and your wealth. Any thoughts on that, Anthony?
The message you're feeding right back is that do not rush to the exit, right? Make sure you have exits are not an end. Okay, that's the message. The exit is not the end. It's in some ways like a marriage. The wedding is not the end. It's the beginning of your marriage, okay? The exit is the beginning of your next phase of your life, and you're absolutely nailing it. You hire experts like yourself or whoever you're going to hire that help you plan that exit so that you can minimize that tax impact or eliminate it if it's allowed, whatever it happens to be. And you're exactly right. What are you going to do post-exit? You're going to start a new business, or you're going to go to Tahiti, right? And either of those is perfectly fine, depending on who you are and what you want to do. You want to gift it all to your church. That's totally, those are your choices, right? But do it in a way, it goes back to that leadership team. Your leadership team isn't just the people you have running your company. It's also the people who help you leave it.
Powerful. Love it. And by the way,
having the right people there helping you out through the exit door is huge. You're right. A lot of mistakes get made there.
Absolutely. If people want to learn more about that, you go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com on how to build a capital gains tax exit plan. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We also wrote a book on it called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. You can pick that up on Amazon. We got Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book. And it's basically my story of learning about this too late. I wish I would have known from my clients before the '08 crash, and then learning about it afterwards, and now implementing it to unlock freedom and multiply impact for those who are exiting highly appreciated assets. Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That being said, we're running out of time. Anthony, you ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you can go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget make sure you tell yourself to do?
Nothing. I love exactly how my life has turned out. I wouldn't change a thing.
Perfect. Number one book you recommend or gift the most in the past year?
Dune. It will teach you more about political power and science than any other book out there, even though it's science fiction.
Perfect. Do question number 3. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's around to notice.
Excellent. Next question. What are you most curious about right now?
Artificial intelligence and quantum computing.
How are you best using ChatGPT?
Every day in my life, I use a different AI, but I use it to answer all sorts of questions that I used to have to rely on a human for.
Last question. After all the people you've helped and all the success you've had, how do you best practice a stewardship mindset over ownership? And what's something that you really believe in to help MVPs?
You need to take care of yourself first. You think of it, when you're in an airplane, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before your kid. Why? Because if you pass out, you can't help anybody else. You need to take care of your mind, your spirit, and your body.
Excellent. Anthony Nitsos, I want to thank you for being on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. Man, we covered a lot in here the last 40 minutes. Thank you. I want to encourage you to keep using your superpower and your gift of healing and helping people in particular heal their financial corporations in a way that can multiply their freedom and impact and make a big difference for their team members, for their clients, for their customers. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you mind one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
The best place to find me is through our website, SaaS, SaaS Gurus, GURUS.io. Go to that /lab. You can download the ebook. You can reach out and do the contact us page. I make a point of making sure I respond to people as quickly as possible. As far as I'm concerned, there's no such as a weekend. I never heard about that term until somebody mentioned it the other day. My weeks don't end. They're just a flow.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. I also want to thank all of our listeners for listening or watching us on YouTube, on the Build It to Billions podcast and YouTube channel, as well as the Capital Gains Tax Solutions and podcast and YouTube channel. We're dual recording on both of those podcasts and YouTube channels. And I want to encourage everyone to continue on your journey from millions to billions, to give more all of it away to help MVPs. Rewind this. Let's do it again. Share it with someone that could be of impact to you, especially if they're in the tech world, especially if they're in the clear avatar for Anthony, to connect this episode with that particular person that can make a huge impact for them and their life. And of course, if you have a massive exit coming up, we would love the opportunity to see if you qualify for our services with the Deferred Sales Trust, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Appreciate everyone listening and watching out there, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye now.